Good morning and welcome to the Raben Report. I'm your host, Elliot Raben, so get ready to get triggered. Good morning and welcome to the Raben Report. I'm your host, Elliot Raben, and with me is my expert panel, Amara, Samuel, and Jessica. How are you guys?
Good. Great.
Awesome. I think I'm a bit hot, or somebody's a bit hot, their mic. Let's just turn their mics off for a second while we figure that out. Yeah. So we're just going to fix that in a second. But welcome to the Raben Report. As mentioned, I'm your host with our expert panel. How are you guys? I think I asked that, but how are you guys? Good? Yeah? Good. Living the dream. So to begin, all opinions expressed are not those of Ryerson or Ryerson faculty and are only those of the individual commentators. Viewer discretion is advised. Let's start with our brief recap of the week. Now, we had 3 things lined up. I'm going to change one of them, and it's going to be about what we talked about last week, the Canadian federal election, because that's probably the biggest newsmaker we had last week. The Liberals won a minority government, and one of the biggest things I want to talk about this was the fact that independent candidate Jody Wilson-Raybould won her seat. What do you guys think of that?
Are the mics okay?
Somebody, do you want to turn mic 4 off for a sec? Yeah, it's 4. That's me. Yeah, so turn it 4 down a bit. Try that. Go ahead, Jessica.
Hello?
Yeah, turn 4 down a bit even further.
Okay.
There we go. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I sound better now.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a horrible voice.
And even
better.
me a bit. Turn me down a bit. And Sam? Just a bit. And myself? And you, sorry? Weird. I can hear a lot of, maybe...
You can hear outside.
Yeah, I can literally hear outside, but...
It sounds okay.
I just hear this, sound. I don't know
Yeah,
what it is.
I hear too.
Turn off Jessica's mic for a sec.
It's
It's
that
with
one.
Jessica's mic. I don't know what it is, but...
Silencing my voice.
I don't know. Turn it back on?
Yeah, it's mine.
I don't know. I guess we'll have to... Turn it down a little more. Let's see what happens. Further? Jessica, go ahead.
Hello.
Just talk louder.
Climate change
Yeah,
is climate
if you
crisis.
talk louder, we'll be okay. It's
okay.
better.
I just have to scream.
But yeah.
Scream my opinions. Everybody listen to me. No, I'm kidding.
But what are your thoughts on Jody Wilson-Raybould winning her seat as an independent?
That's great. Obviously, as an independent, it means more. But considering everything that happened with her and Trudeau, I think it's great.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good thing.
Sam?
It doesn't push the power from the minority government to form a majority in any sense, even if the NDP did cooperate with the Liberals. So it's a good, I think, as a show of her integrity and her ability as a politician, it's a good thing. And to have varying voices in the House is good, but it probably won't have much impact.
Jessica?
Surprisingly, I have to agree with that. I think it shows the power of her abilities and her voice and just the vast support that she received, and that obviously didn't come just because people were voting the party. It came from they were voting for her, which I think shows a lot more in the integrity of her as a politician.
Yeah, it's quite... I just think it's great that she was able to win her seat. As Sam said, I don't think she'll have much power, but the mere fact that she did it is quite a feat, because Jane Philpott, Selena Cesaris, they didn't do it. They weren't able to win as independents. Liana Alislav won as part of a different party, so that shows that she's a good candidate for the riding, and they like her. But let's move on to, I guess, some positive news. The leader of ISIS was killed. So
Like a dog.
Yeah.
Yay.
Any thoughts on that? I mean,
a bad man is dead.
Yeah.
I think we can just chop it up to that. I don't necessarily agree with Trump wanting to release the footage. I think somebody still is dead, regardless of who it is, and as horrible a person he is. I don't really think we need to.
I think it's just
show
kind
the
of
death.
gruesome.
Yeah,
like, are people
it
just gonna
is.
enjoy watching? Like, it's just, I understand it. Like, I don't think anybody no one's sad about it
No.
here. I think it is a good thing, but it's just kind of
It is very
gruesome to be watching a murder and enjoying it. I feel like it's just doesn't really have a place in civilized society.
I feel also it makes it seem very cinematic and more of a more just not reality. Like it seems, oh, this is like a movie, because you watch a million movies out there and all these, there's the common narrative of the bad guy is shot down and the horrible terrorists are murdered, and I don't know, I think it would take away just how horrible of an organization this is and the reality behind the fact, and showing brutality and murder and guns and violence, it really doesn't do anything for the betterment of society. We can just leave it at he's dead, he's been murdered through killing himself. That's all we need to know.
Was Bin Laden's footage released or no?
I don't
No.
think so.
No, it
Not even
wasn't?
a picture of
No.
him dead.
Wow, I thought there was a picture.
Was
It
that?
was a fake one.
Yeah.
Oh,
There was a lot of controversy behind that one, like saying that he was actually
Yeah. 'Cause
murdered beforehand. He's been dead for a while, and I mean, I don't know. I didn't research it enough, and I don't know if any of the controversy is just, people starting whatever to take power away from something. But yeah, I don't think there was actual legitimately proven footage released behind that event.
Well, in other international news, let's move on to the UK, where Prime Minister Boris Johnson did not get enough votes to call an early election. Now, that means that he won't be able to get a majority to vote for a Brexit deal. What does that mean? Brexit has been going on for so many years and nothing's happened, right? What's your take on that?
the EU pushed the deadline back to January 31st, 2020, I think. I mean, I don't really have a lot of feelings about Brexit. I haven't researched it too much. I just think it's kind of comical how it, I know people didn't think that Brexit, they were going to vote for Brexit, and then it happened, and it still hasn't really happened.
Yeah.
So I'm just interested to see what does happen.
It's funny because whenever there was in the past 2 years, I think it is almost 2 years, whenever there was an extension of the agreement or they were reaching some kind of conclusion to the withdrawal, the value of the British pound would fluctuate. But with this most recent ordeal, it hasn't really fluctuated that much, I guess, because the market's kind of adjusted to the fact that this is going to happen every a couple months, so maybe we shouldn't expect much, which is I found pretty funny.
Yeah, I think it's been such an extenuated and long process with no real outcome. And obviously there's not a lot of, gung-ho. I would definitely want this kind of support behind it, which is why it keeps getting repealed and postponed and all that kind of stuff. I honestly don't have any idea what will happen. I am interested to see what the final outcome, and kind of just to put this all to bed, to be honest. It seems like it's been an incredibly drawn out process.
In other European countries that have significant voices in their parliament and in the EU, I guess it's called EU Parliament.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're looking towards the UK and how they withdraw, and seeing how the procedure is. And I'm sure when they do eventually withdraw or not, it would impact these movements in these other countries that are leaning towards leaving, like Italy, and then I think there's some Eastern European and Balkan countries too.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's definitely something. So when's the election going to happen then? If it's not going to be an early election, when's the election happening?
In the UK?
Yeah.
Oh, well, they have to lose the confidence of the House. I mean, they kind of all agree on the not leaving. I mean, there's a narrow margin, but I don't know. I'm not too knowledgeable about British politics. I'm just interested in the EU, but I don't know. It could be anywhere, anytime.
Yeah. I mean, the scheduled one, and if they don't call it early, it is for May 2022. But
May 2022.
that's definitely going to be called early.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, lastly, in a little more concerning news, there's some raging wildfires in California, which relates to our main topic, I feel. But, people have been evacuated, right? People have been evacuated from their homes. And it's not the first time. Like, this has happened many times last year. What can we do about it, you know?
It's every time that this happens, I'm just even more shocked that it happens at such a vast level as well. Like everything that happened last year, there was just so much. It was millions upon millions of dollars in damage, loss of homes, loss of lives, loss of pets, loss of ecology. And then to think that it's happening at such a vast level again this year, with more put in place, like the cutting of like PG&E, cutting the power of things like that, which is having, I mean, I can see why that would be, that would think that that's a reasonable course of action to try to just limit the amount of damage, but it's also having really, negative effects on people's personal lives, not from the standpoint of, oh, I can't charge my phone, but from a really scary level of people that are surviving on life support or on oxygen tanks. There's already been a death reported from a guy not being able to receive oxygen. So it's just, what might be an idea to solve the problem. It's not long term. That's not going to prevent fires from happening again next year. And it's really having detrimental effect to people's lives right now. So again, this really ties into our talk of climate change today, because we need more of a long-term solution for these vast climate disruptions and ecological disruptions that are occurring more frequently.
Yeah, it's obviously not something positive that's happening, and we have to take care of it. But let's move on to our main topic, which, as mentioned, is climate change. According to Encyclopedia Britannica, climate change is a periodic modification of Earth's climate brought about as a result of changes in the atmosphere, as well as interactions between the atmosphere and various other geological, chemical, biological, and geographic factors within the Earth system. Now, as one of the biggest issues dominating the media, climate change is definitely something that people are split on. People are divided on the importance, the repercussions, and overall truth about climate change. On today's show, we dive deep into this issue and breathe a sigh of relief if we don't all die due to climate change when it's over. As a reminder, we are live on Facebook, so make sure to comment on our feed so that you can have your comments read live on air. So let's start with our polls on Facebook. So we asked our audience a question, which was, are we in a climate crisis? And Sam's pulling that up. What are the results? What was the question?
As one of the biggest topics dominating the media, it's time to get down. Oh, wait, sorry. Should climate change be classified as a climate emergency?
Okay. And the options were?
Yes, or no, we're steady.
Okay. And the results? How many people voted?
We got 85 votes. 72% said yes, climate emergency. 28% said no. And that is 61 votes for yes and 24 for no, we're steady.
Wow. And Jessica, what do we have on Instagram on our vote for the same question?
So same question. We had 23 votes total. 57 voted yes, we are in a crisis, and 43% voted no, we are not in a crisis. 13 votes for yes and 10 votes for no.
So clearly people are divided. I mean, the majority on Facebook have said that it's a problem, and it's quite evenly split on Facebook, on Instagram. And it's funny just looking at the people who voted. It's a very conservative liberal issue, I find. Mm-hmm. The people who voted no are generally more conservative than the people who voted yes. But before we get into your thoughts on that, let's talk about the cause of climate change. What is causing it to happen, really, as a society? Obviously, there's a scientific explanation, which I just explained. But what are we doing to cause it?
I think the fossil fuel industry is a big cause because it's higher levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, right? So the fossil fuel industry is a big emitter of carbon dioxide. So I think that's probably one of the biggest ones right now.
Oh, 100%. Even like just our carbon footprint in general. And I think, especially in the Western world, when we have such like fast needs, fast fashion. The latest iPhone's out. I have to get rid of my iPhone that I just got like last year to get something new. And that mentality, I think, is having a real big detrimental effect because it just increases waste in our society, which increases, our greenhouse gases, which eventually causes the global warming. And that's the problem that we're having now is just the Earth's core is warming, which is having like the domino effect of if we only rise maybe a degree or a degree and a half, which is the most that we possibly can rise without crossing the point of no return. That's what are the causes. So yeah, we have major issues with the fossil fuel industry, which is probably the biggest area that we could address to combat climate change and our climate crisis, really. But also we have to address our own wasteful practices.
Sam?
So I think the biggest contributor is the transition of large countries like China and India and Pakistan and some African countries like Nigeria to a lesser degree from developing to developed consumer industries, societies, I guess. And I don't really understand sure, it's in part due to Western consumption habits and on a per capita basis. Canada and the U.S. and I believe Australia have the highest rates of, a larger carbon footprint. But I have this written down right here. Canadian greenhouse gases levels account for 1.5% of global emissions. And that is in part due to the habits that we have, but also our small population. So I always get a little confused with the little, I guess, not the hypocrisy, but the conflicting ideas that exist when we say that we need to grow our industries and we need to grow our population through higher levels of immigration or just natural increase. And if we acknowledge that, Western consumer habits on a per capita basis lead to, a larger carbon footprint, why would we want to increase the size of our population? I know it's something called the Millennia Initiative. I think that's what it's called. It wants to increase Canada's population to 100 million by the turn of the century. That's crazy if you acknowledge that we consume, more products.
So then the next question that I was going to ask was, who were the biggest contributors? And you said China, for example, and
India,
India,
Pakistan, I think Nigeria, and some other African countries.
And, aside from who the biggest contributors are, when we talk about climate change, do scientists really agree on the rate, on the fact that it's an issue? What are scientists saying?
What I've read multiple places is that 97% of climate scientists agree on the idea that climate change is a problem and that human activity is causing it. So I think, yeah, for the most part.
You're always going to have a couple percent that are like, it's not as, or they're whatever facts that they're finding. Even if they're saying that, yeah, it could be, it's not as an important issue. Some people are thinking that it's not as an important issue or it's not as detrimental, but I think the vast majority say that it is, which proves the state of emergency I think that we need to feel that we are in.
So you do feel that we are in a state of emergency? We're
in a state of crisis, yeah.
I like the terminology and nomenclature is a very powerful tool. If you read Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, it defines how important terminology is for changing the discussion. So I just find it curious that we went from global warming, which included acid rain and the polar bears disappearing, even though there's since Al Gore made in Inconvenient Truth, the number of polar bears in the northern climate of the world has increased. We went from global warming to climate change. When global warming wasn't digestible enough or didn't arise enough fear, we went to climate change. And then that was too vague because is it cooling? Is it warming? I don't know. And now it's climate emergency. And that's been peddled, the last 5 months, I guess.
When did global warming, when was that around? Like what time?
I think it was around the time of Inconvenient Truth, right?
Was that like the 90s,
yeah.
early 2000s?
Yeah.
Early 2000s,
so
yeah.
Is it not possible that it's got worse and that's why the terminology is more urgent because it is more urgent?
Well, I think it's more so because they realize that there isn't really a steady increase in global temperature. And I've even read this on mainstream publications where it's climate change can result in extreme weather, which is extreme colds or extreme.
Yeah. But that's
hot.
the idea that it's
Yeah.
climate change. It's not necessarily
Right,
warming.
I don't appreciate the gravity that we give scientific consensus when they change from such a quick
think
quick
they-
conclusion. It was like, it's heating. Oh, it's not heating. It's extreme. Like,
So you think because you don't understand the
that's
switch
not
from
what I said.
global warming
No.
to like climate change? I feel like scientists probably know what they're doing
Yeah,
in
and-
terms of the
Mm-hmm.
words they use to refer to it. And I think, I think that they probably have a pretty good idea of why they're changing. I think it's more urgent, and that's why.
Exactly.
refer
And
to it more
going off
urgently.
of that, like if you especially right now, people are hearing that it's not just global warming, it's a state of climate crisis. You're going to feel that you need to do more personally to combat these rises, as well as even if like what you're doing personally is, protesting against big business, is who are one of the biggest culprits of the state of our climate right now, then they'll be more motivated to implement plans and practices.
like how would you see that through though? Like, how does alarming people and calling it a crisis, which is a new term, right? You just acknowledged, like, you change people's opinions. So how would that come into practice? Like,
So-
how would creating alarmism or
'Cause
a
it would-
sense of alarm?
Because people, it feels like, oh, there's a fire under you. Like,
Yeah.
it's not just, oh, I can think about this in a couple years when it's worse, or I can think it's not my top priority right now. I have other things going on, so I don't really have to think about it. Even if it's small little changes in practice, you're still doing something about it, like going vegan because you want to do something for the environment, or as simple as just changing from a plastic to a metal straw, or using a metal reusable water bottle. If you're doing small things like that, you're going to have a long-term impact because you're taking business away from the plastics industry, or you're taking money away from the agricultural farming industry, which is a huge contributor to carbon footprints. It actually has a bigger carbon footprint than the emissions that come from cars and trains and transport. So I think if people feel that there is a more detrimental effect that is happening from our world globally warming. I mean, it's still global warming. It's just more of an immense pressure that we have to face right now, and not just postpone it till it is more of a bigger problem.
If you want to assume that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think what Sam is saying is, how are you going to convince people that it really is a problem and not just a buzzword? Is that what you're kind of going for?
Yeah.
I think a lot of young people have been convinced. I think we see, I know that's a question, but we see a lot of young people demonstrating. I think part of that is due to the fact that I think young people, especially like university students, just like having a cause and want to protest against things. But I think that just education, like going through school, in the years that we were going through elementary school, there was a lot of emphasis put on recycling and just the climate in general. So I think that the newer generation of people have care a lot more about the environment.
Recycling's a scam. We ship a very small minority of recyclable material is actually
I'm
recycled.
sure.
Okay,
We
That'll-
need more education behind the I think the concept of recycling is a great concept but the education behind recycling
And also,
is
like,
not there.
a lot of places just like they send
They
it all to
do.
the same place. They just
And
have separate.
yeah,
we
and-
send most of our Canada specifically sent most of our recyclable material to East Asia, specifically the Philippines. I'm sure you remember the story.
I heard about that.
And the quality of the recyclable material that we sent was so poor. That's what caused the I guess controversy, because they were receiving basically unusable stuff that they just
That
eventually
couldn't be
Burning,
recycled.
yeah.
they eventually just burnt
Yeah.
it or put it in their own landfills.
But I think then the problem isn't with recycling as a concept. It
Yeah.
would be how people recycle,
execution.
right? The
Exactly.
execution,
Exactly.
right? Would you agree with that, Sam? Or you think the whole concept is a scam?
I think probably
The birds work for the bourgeoisie.
reusing or limiting the things you buy is probably a lot better than recycling. I don't think recycling does
I think
much.
it's a hand-in-hand approach.
Yeah, because then there's not as much waste. You're
Yeah.
using it. Doesn't that help? You don't think that helps at all?
Just buy less. I don't know.
Yeah, but if you still buy less and if you still, let's say, part of what you buy that is bought less contains plastics or recyclable materials, you should still have a program in place to properly recycle that. I mean, I definitely agree with you that the system that we have in place right now is really flawed. And a lot of people don't realize that recyclables can be really easily contaminated. Let's say, for example, you have a plastic container that you had like a sandwich in, and there was food scraps in it, and you just put all that into the recycling container. That's now all a contaminated bin because you can't have any compostable materials in your compost. And so again, that just gets thrown to the landfill. It's not actually recycled. So I think we need to have more education in the system of recycling. Like even, for example, like a Pepsi can, if you had a can of pop, you can't put that into the recycling bin without rinsing it. But that's not even something that I knew until like recently.
I didn't know till you told me.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I didn't know that either.
You have to be so, but so we just need more education behind the matter, as well as implement more process that actually puts more of a priority in our recycling system, and keeping the recyclable materials here to reuse, to melt down, to put back into a secondary form, and not just shipping it out to somewhere where the carbon emissions will just triple.
I take issue with. I agree. I generally agree with that. I think people should reuse certain things, and I use a reusable water bottle. Yay me! I'm so virtuous. But I take issue to the. If you want to talk about solutions, I take issue to the belief that reducing or changing your diet in a certain way, like becoming vegan, is better for the environment. When you think Canada is a country that's cold, I think we can all agree on that, a majority of the year. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these foods that vegans eat or people that are on an alternative diet have to be shipped over from overseas, sometimes very large distances from South America or Asia. And those transportation costs, they're not sailing here on solar panels. They're all using
less.
No, actually, it's not. If the best thing you can probably do is if you buy local, and you
can't you? I mean, I guess you can't really have a balanced diet and buy local and be vegan because there's not
no. That's the thing.
So
because during certain months of the year, I take issue. Well, that's a whole other discussion. Take issue with the natural. The whole natural argument. Which I mean, if the country in majority of the world it gets cold, and you're not going to grow kale or spinach when it's -20. I mean, you're gonna have to hunt.
That's why you stock, like how it works in my family and with what I do personally is you use preserves and you make that's what all October is about. You can? Yeah.
You ferment stuff?
Yeah. Oh, and as well as we have a cantina and stuff like that, and things like vegetables like for example squash. That can last from when it is harvested to the end of the winter. That can last you if it's kept in a cold place. Things like, rice or whatever. I mean, you'll never be able to buy that Canadian grown, but that's only not just vegans eat rice. Everybody eats, well, most people eat rice. It's just the idea that no diet is going to be completely free of carbon emission. It's just that it's lesser. You're having a lesser impact. Like Oxford University Press, they produced an article saying that ditching animal products could reduce your carbon footprint by 73%. That's not 100%. You're still going to have a bit of an impact, but you're still reducing it 73% more than if you were to eat meat and dairy. But I agree with you from the standpoint of eating local, even if you don't decide to go vegan or you don't decide to go vegetarian, because I'm not going to say that it is a diet for everybody. I mean, I know a couple individuals and they've dealt with eating disorders and stuff like that. And they've, their body has been in a state of just depletion for so many years and they've dealt with so many things that they have been advised that they physically cannot pursue that kind of diet. Yeah. But even if you're not fully vegan and you do meatless Mondays, which I think is a pretty common term, or you buy from a local supermarket, a local farmer's market, and you do simple things like that, you may not be reducing your carbon footprint by 73% if you go all the way, but you can still be reducing it by a certain amount. And I think that's the idea, that even if you just do a little bit, you're still having a long-term impact. The problem comes when people think, I'm only reducing by 10%, or, my vote doesn't matter. That whole mentality, it dominoes, and it does have an effect later on.
And it's not just about food with carbon footprints. Like you mentioned fast fashion earlier.
Yeah.
I know that the clothing industry is like absolutely awful in terms of waste and emissions. So doing things like thrifting or I guess just not buying fast fashion, trying to keep things. I think that's just in general trying to conserve what you buy and what you consume.
I think why people are so opposed
Works.
to it is they don't just see the tax policy changes, like the carbon tax and whatever, but they also see, like, I'm going to tell the audience to notice, and you'll probably start to notice if I tell you these things. If you go on any kind of mainstream news publication, you won't notice it every day, every week. But look, they'll start suggesting how cockroaches are the protein of the future, and how we should eat less milk, less meat. I saw one, I think it was by the BBC, about how cockroach milk might replace dairy.
Cockroaches make milk?
It was news to me too.
You can make almond milk from your home. Like, I make it all the time. You literally just soak almonds. You don't need to go find a cockroach and milk it.
Okay, I'm just saying, people.
It's true,
If you
'cause-
if you take notice, you'll start to notice. And also, that's all these lifestyle changes. Like I saw ones that say have less children or have no children.
But don't you think that we're going to have to change our lifestyle? Like, I think you said earlier that developing countries are becoming developed,
Yeah.
and that's what's causing a lot of the global emissions to go
Sure.
up. And I believe that. But the whole world can't live like we do in the developed world. It's not sustainable.
Okay, so why?
So
are we,
maybe we all have to change our lifestyle. Maybe we can, like, we're going to keep pointing fingers until it gets to,
But
until
then
it's
the
too late.
majority
Yeah.
has to get accustomed due to the minority, is basically what you're saying.
How so?
we're just
Well, if-
Wouldn't we be the minority? Aren't they the majority? Like,
Fair enough. Okay, I see what you mean.
we're just going to go
Well-
to the lowest common denominator where we're all living in
That's
cages
what I
and
mean.
drinking
No.
cockroach milk.
no,
I didn't
but
go that
That's not
far,
no.
I don't know.
Listen.
almond milk. You don't
Oh,
have to
no,
milk
almond
cockroaches
milk
for that.
is
I
One at a
hate
time.
almond
gross.
milk.
One at a
I
time.
agree.
It is not.
It
So
is.
I'm going to squeeze my nuts and
Where
then
does it
drink
come from?
One-
Where
one
are
at a
almonds
time.
nipples? Sorry.
What?
Where
Sorry.
does almond milk come from?
If you don't like almond,
Yeah.
try oat.
Oat?
It's really creamy.
I like
actually.
strawberry
Oh
milk.
God. Anyway, looking at all like scholarly reports, because I mean, you cannot deny that the world is even if you don't see that. Oh, you know, through my lifetime of 22 years, 21 years. I'm almost 22. Through my lifetime, you know, it hasn't been that vast. It hasn't been like, you know, the dinosaurs went extinct, because that was a climate change. That was a cooling effect, and that's what caused the ice age, and that's what
Yeah, because
caused the
a meteor
extinction.
hit the planet.
Yeah, but not only, but that still caused a climate change, and that still
I
was.
think that's a.
It did.
It did.
Yeah, I know it. Yeah, that's one
Are you?
hypothesis.
Do you have a problem with her comparing what is happening
Yeah,
now
an
to a meteor
extraterrestrial
hitting the planet?
object hitting the planet is a little different than.
We are surrounded by
I didn't recycle
meteors.
this morning.
Oh my God. Listen. We have to start accommodating, because we are still facing global temperature rising. Where global temperature is rising.
I don't know if that's the narrative anymore.
It is.
I think the narrative
changing.
is that temperatures are becoming extreme one way or the other, and that the rate of natural disasters are increasing.
When the temperature rises, sure, like look at the Gulf Stream, for example. If you go from the Arctic to the stream that comes down, like it's the Pacific, I think it's the Pacific, and it's super cold, and then it comes around, and then it, like, as you get closer to the equator, it heats up again. Once, you know, with the carbon emissions that get trapped within the Earth because they're not being able to be released, that heats over in the Arctic, that heats the ice caps, so that melts the ice caps, and that makes the water colder. So you're going to have that sway of, it's not just because something is heating doesn't mean something can't be cooling. You know what I'm saying?
Right, but then why the change from global warming to climate change? I mean,
Because
I-
it's
I-
not
Such a
necessarily
narrative.
warming.
It's
because
not. Yeah.
it's not necessarily warming, but I thought the world was heating up.
It is, but that doesn't mean that other things can't be also cooling.
That's not what the things
the
I read.
Like water systems can be cooling just
Yeah.
because things are rising, and that affects a lot of our marine life, because certain areas shouldn't be cold, but they are cold, and that causes migration. There we go. Not mitigate. I'm forgetting
Well,
law later, but sorry, Elliot.
No, go ahead. Finish.
What was I saying? But yeah, so because the global temperature is rising, and we are set to rise another 1.5 degrees, I think by 2030, 300, those changes that are happening, they used to like at the beginning of time, if you want to go that far back,
Yes,
there
please.
were always going to be some form of climate change and some form of climate rise, but that took millions upon millions of years to have any detrimental impact. Where we are now, it doesn't take millions upon millions of years to see, polar bear extinction or to see.
There's more polar bears today than there was.
But that's because of our own action as well. That was just a brief
How many
example.
were there before?
I think it was a couple thousand. I think there's at least 11,000 now.
I mean, that's a good thing. That means that we're doing some form of change. But regardless of the polar bear things,
I just think it's a little.
I just mean you're talking about Al Gore's thing, right?
Yeah.
How many were there before that?
Before.
Like, have we gotten
like
back to those levels?
scholarly documented.
I think that's the point.
Yeah.
Okay.
So even if we are, in this period of rise, it's going to be happening instead of rise that or change that is happening over millions upon millions of years, which allows for species to adapt and to change, and for like even just going down to the basics of trees, they have to start. They take 10 to move 10 a tree seed to move 10 meters and to grow to higher elevation so that they can reach, peaks of sun and all that kind of stuff. It takes thousands of years to be able to do that. And the place that we are in right now with climate change, it's not millions upon millions of years for change. It's thousands upon thousands of years for change, which means that we have to start adapting our own practices, because we can't deny that we have done damage to this earth and that we aren't going to be experiencing the reprimand of our actions and that we are going to be experiencing rising in temperatures, but we have to start adapting. We have to start change. We have to start divestment. We have to start a new narrative and a new course of action to help combat what we have already caused.
So, in terms of changing the way we live, adapting, I want to talk about electric cars. Let's talk about...
Scam. Buy a used car if you really care. If you really care, go to a lot, buy some beater you don't care about, and drive that. Unless you want to,
Are you talking about like the cost of like the emissions that are associated with like manufacturing and
a
shipping the
giant
car?
lithium battery? Yeah.
But long term, does that do better than non-electric
fuels.
car?
I think
Because isn't the idea like we're changing our lifestyle so that long term,
We can all be
It's-
electric.
or the emissions are less.
Yeah.
reducing our carbon footprint.
So, Sam, you don't think electric cars are the way? You don't think that they're a better option?
they might be in the future. I mean, right now, I don't get the virtue signaling behind.
But why in the future? Why not start it now is the question.
Because there's still so many, the majority of cars aren't electric. And the majority of consumers buy an electric car because they think they're impacting the environment in a positive way, but it's not.
It has to start somewhere. Even Toronto is implementing fully electric buses. That's starting.
Yeah,
next
they already
month.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
We
first
also have
concern
hybrid buses
TTC
and
should
stuff
have.
like
Is
Yeah, true. TTC is a whole
vehicles are
issue on
Yeah,
its
but,
own, but
the idea is that they're starting, and that could, be for a long-term gain. I mean, even if you look at the first Tesla compared to the Tesla that's now, the battery lasts so much longer, and you can get so much more to a charge. So the technology is definitely there, and we can definitely see it being, the long term for the future, because a big part of the climate crisis narrative is divesting in fossil fuels and investing in more renewable green resource. So if we're going to have this idea of divesting in fossil fuels and we're going to limit our fossil fuels in the long run, which I really think we should, we have to find another energy source, and that could be electric cars. I mean, we still have to find a way to get around.
Yeah, so I don't get this hoping that eventually we'll find a way to produce a vehicle that doesn't, in its production, does not produce any greenhouse gas emissions whatsoever. That's a whole other
It's
argument.
less.
Sure, it's less.
You can't be never. You can't be nothing. I mean, we're always
so we're
going
screwed,
to have
but
something.
we're screwed slower. I don't know. I just want to get into the details, because I think if you're proposing solutions, you can't just be so broad and say we need to divest or we need to recycle better. Like, sure, those are nice things to say, but if you're really, I wrote these down. If you're really serious about reducing emissions or reducing our carbon footprint, you could limit trade with big emitters, big emitting countries. You could develop your own industries where you can control the regulations, you can control labor safety, labor laws, whatever. You can invest in nuclear and hydro, which are honestly the only real alternative energy sources that are renewable to a certain degree with nuclear. And then you can control the rates of immigration and population growth in higher per capita countries that are developed, like Western Europe, Eastern Europe and North America. But none of those are actually discussed, and none of those are given honest weight, because we'd rather say, I'm going to be so virtuous. I'm going to recycle. I'm going to drive my little battery-powered, cut cart.
Renewable, like switching to renewable energy is talked about?
No, yeah, it's talked about in solar and wind, but those are minuscule, and they don't produce nearly enough energy to meet national needs.
But it's also a lot
you
of
could
research involved.
combine those with hydroelectricity, which does, and then they would meter. Like, we could be completely renewable in that sense.
Sure, but hydro is very regional specific, I'm sure you know. Like, it requires lots of rivers and dams.
Yes.
So
Water.
Yeah, which Canada has a lot of.
And space for, wind
Dams.
turbines and solar panels
Yeah.
as well.
But I don't really see, that's just one of the ones I mentioned, but I don't really see this discussion about nuclear as an example. And you have to look at, we really should develop our natural resources, and we should strive to be as energy independent as possible. If you acknowledge that we can control our own regulations around emissions and stuff like that, why wouldn't we? I mean, the opportunity cost is that we import these energy, like petroleum from countries where they don't give a shit about how they control their carbon. They don't have carbon scrubbers or whatever, or the labor laws. So why wouldn't we? But that's never discussed, because I think we just paint this broad picture about, I see smoke. Smoke bad. Me don't want smoke.
Well, I mean, I agree with you in part there. I mean, I think, especially if Canada, which has really high standards, and we start putting more of a weight on what needs to be done here locally compared to what's going on, sending out and exporting it all to be done globally where those standards aren't the same. And that comes with big business as well. Like, let's say Nike, for example, having all their sweatshops going on, not caring about human life, not caring about human dignity, and not caring about the environment at all. If we start to put more standards in here and focus the industry here, that's definitely something that would help long term. And you're right from that standpoint. But we are such a westernized capitalist world, which makes that incredibly hard and really sad when you think about it, that one of the biggest potential things besides divestment that could really help us wouldn't necessarily occur just because of money. And
I think even the Liberal Party is supposed to care about the environment, and Trudeau talked about the environment a lot. I read recently he's going to plant 20 million or
2 billion, I think.
2 billion trees with the proceeds from the pipeline that he just bought. So I
don't think that
it doesn't balance out. And we need to get serious about,
because how else would you transport oil? Via train, which is more unsafe.
No, he said he was going to plant 2 billion trees to offset the damage to the environment done by the pipeline.
So I don't think it balances.
But those don't balance out.
I don't know if it balances it out, but isn't it?
It's going to take a while for those trees to contribute positively to the environment.
But then looking back at other examples, isn't planting 2 billion trees a start? Isn't it doing?
Yeah,
I mean, I think you could start at not buying a pipeline. Personally,
how else would you transport petroleum?
But then, if you don't buy a pipeline, then you have
don't have petroleum.
Okay, then we're gonna have wind turbines the size of the CN Tower in each of our backyards.
I think. Well, then it comes down to the research that needs to be implemented, and what is being studied now, and the activism that is happening now, to start figuring out ways, or not even just figuring out, because I'm sure we're there. I'm no scientist, so I don't really understand the exact intricacies of what has to occur, but it definitely has its platform now, and we're definitely looking into ways that we can just be fully away from the fossil fuel and petroleum-based industries. So, I mean, in an ideal world, and I don't agree with the pipeline, then that money that was invested in the pipeline should have been invested in green renewable resources. Because if you look at the statistics and you look at what's going on, the farther off that we delay doing something about the climate crisis, and the further we deny it or don't have any real structurally sound courses of action to help combat our climate crisis, every year we hesitate or don't do anything, it adds $500 billion to the cost of being able to actually have an effect on what we're doing to the world.
Well, we have a comment from Moralia that kind of agrees with both of you, Sam and Jessica. She goes, I agree that nuclear energy is one of the cleanest sources of energy compared to solar panels that need battery power and cause pollution when they are made. Also, materialism is poisoning our planet. And she says that you can start at boycotting anything made in China to prevent climate change. But going back to the pipeline, without the pipeline, you're looking at getting, because you're not going to eradicate fossil fuels in a day. So if you don't get the pipeline,
Even in a couple of decades.
Exactly. So without the pipeline, you're going to have to get foreign oil. And working with a country like Saudi Arabia, would you say is a worse option than a pipeline that allows Canada to grow? Jessica?
That's why I said that I don't fully agree with the pipeline. I didn't say that I 100% against or 100% for. I mean, I'm a realist at heart, so I understand that there's a lot more contributing factors coming into play besides just like, pipeline is good, pipeline is bad. And there's arguments for and there's arguments against. I mean, from the arguments for, it keeps it more localized and we don't have to go overseas and we're not increasing our global emissions by transporting from so far away. So from that standpoint, yeah, I mean, it's positive because we are still going to be, we're not going to be fully disvested for quite a while. I mean, it's such an embedded part of not just our country, but globally. But why I'm like mainly against is just because the amount of money that is involved to implement this pipeline and the amount and the lack of work that is being done to research and implement more green technology is where my issues are at. And that's why I think that, as much as you are saving from the standpoint of you're not having to work with, like, let's say Saudi Arabia, and you're not getting that dirty oil, and you're not, you're taking it out of Canada, we're also not doing enough to truly disvest and truly get into the process of getting rid of.
What do you mean
divestment?
Like, I'm familiar with the term a little bit, but
so divestment is literally disinvesting from the fossil fuel industry, so cutting all ties with anything that is not environmentally ethical. So fossil fuels, carbon emissions, that's really there's facts upon fact upon, like, you can't deny that the carbon industry is bad for the environment. And our carbon footprint is rising rapidly. So disinvesting from the fossil fuel industry and investing in green technology is what the course of action is needed to have a truly ecologically sound and environmentally aware system of energy.
So let's talk about how we're combating climate change as a whole, because we had a massive worldwide climate strike. You're shaking your head, Amara. What are your thoughts on that?
Justin Trudeau strike
He
in
did.
Montreal.
against himself.
Against, like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And like we predicted on the show, like Amara rightly said, I remember, it was a fad.
Thank you.
And no one, have you even heard
Nope.
Greta Thunberg's name in the media for like the last week and a half?
Nope.
I did, because she
she's
was in
cited.
Vancouver,
Yeah.
Victoria, but 5,000
It absolutely
people came
was
out.
a fad. I think it was just something that people could feel good about and post on their Instagram story that they were there.
It was like the new Coney 2012. Remember that?
Yes.
the same
It's like,
shit.
and again, like, just the fact that Justin Trudeau was there protesting against, like, world governments not taking climate change seriously enough when he is the leader of our country is ridiculous. And I think that just proves that nobody's taking it seriously.
And it's not like he had a minority government where he couldn't implement his policies.
Exactly.
He had a majority government. If he wanted to do something, he could have done something. Now he's in a minority government, but the NDP is probably going to help
And
him.
when he could do something, he did buy a pipeline, which I understand the benefits it has to the Canadian economy. But I think with how much he made climate change an issue for him, it doesn't. It just
it's hypocritical.
doesn't make sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hypocritical.
So this climate strike, though, as you guys mentioned, it was a fad. Do you think it really did anything other than show that people are concerned?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
Quotations?
you there.
No, go ahead.
If anything, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's just because it's the social media that I ingest, or what I'm ingest, is that the right
that's
word?
terrible.
Follow I'm a part of.
Your bubble?
My bubble? Yeah, that's a good way to put it. What I look at or what I see or what I do, I mean, it's still a very big topic of conversation for me and the people that I, hang out with and surround myself with. So, I mean, from my standpoint, like I'm still trying to do as much as I personally can. From the vast standpoint, I mean, I'm not going to deny that a lot of people were out there for the Instagram pic. I think that that's just fact. That's what happens when there's any big global thing and it's, surrounded by, I mean, even if you look at a couple years ago and there was that Instagram post going around, every time this is shared, then a tree is planted. Like, where were the facts behind that?
Yeah, where were the trees?
And
one
where
like,
were the
one
trees?
prayer, guys.
Oh my God,
It's
that's a
the
whole
same
different
concept.
thing. But it's the same like where is what happened with that? Are there actually
Trees?
millions of trees planted now? I mean maybe, but the cynic in me is saying I don't see it, so I don't know. I don't think so. But going back to just like the idea of climate striking, I mean,
And
I think it's great. I mean, people are getting out there, and even if it's not necessarily doing something, it is still causing awareness. But then the biggest awareness that has to come still, and what I am not seeing, and what really bothers me, is as individuals, what our biggest impact is not just going out one Friday and taking off school to protest, which I still think is a great cause, but also you can't just do that and do nothing. That's not going to have, the impact that is needed. What you have to start doing is, watch your diet if you can, watch the fast fashion, start making a fuss with the corporations that you support because corporations listen to what you do. Look at the Walmart effect. When Walmart said that they weren't going to allow any wood in their store that wasn't Rainforest Alliance approved, every bidder that they had working with Walmart became Rainforest Alliance approved. So you definitely have power with corporations, and that is like the biggest thing us as individuals and us as citizens can do for the climate awareness because we are in such a capitalist and westernized society.
Well, with Greta Thunberg being the leader of this climate strike and this climate movement, what kind of message are we sending? Because people already think that millennials are entitled. And when you have...
She's also not a millennial.
I know.
People
She's
refer
Gen
to
Z.
people not
She's
everybody
14.
under
16.
Did she say no?
under
Yeah.
35
She's
is a
16.
millennial. It's like it's just like
Yeah,
apparently the biggest generation to ever exist.
for sure.
We're
but
not millennials.
No, we're Gen Z.
Yeah.
We're not?
No, we're not.
No.
We're Gen Z. What
Oh.
year were you born? 98?
98?
Gen Z.
Oh, okay. Well, people think millennials and Gen Z are very entitled. So to have a 16-year-old telling the world what to do,
That's not entitled.
You don't think that's entitled?
She specifically told, I think kids was her, in that clip I saw, she said she wants people to be afraid and to be at like unrest. She specifically said afraid.
I think she was not a good face for the climate change movement
I think she was.
I don't think a 16-year-old should be the face of a climate change
of
movement.
any sort of political movement.
Well,
No.
Yeah,
That's
It's
where
just-
we disagree.
Well, they look the people that that push their influence around. They know that children are an effective marketing tool. You saw that with the gun control debate in the U.S. I'm sure you'll see.
Stoneman Douglas children.
Yes, I'm sure you'll see that again with any other kind of political movement they want to push.
Yeah.
But it's an effective tool, and you're going to see it. You saw it again with Greta Thunberg, and you'll see it with something else.
It
It
just
just shows how desperate they are.
Yeah, I don't think people take her seriously. People don't take kids seriously. I think people like to see children being politically active, but they don't necessarily listen to what they're saying. I think it's just kind of like, how cute that kid is,
Like if you're
somewhat politically aware.
if you're making a difference yourself, for example, you look at Mark Kielberger. He started Me to We by actually going to Africa and building schools himself. He didn't just go and preach something and then travel around the world and just talk.
They just like yell at people.
Exactly. He did something about it. And now a whole movement has built around it from that start. But it started with him doing something about it personally, not just preaching.
I think they're different though because he also
Go plant some trees.
they're I guess they're Free the Children, right? As well, like it was Me to We and Free the Children.
Yes, that's Free the Children. Sorry, yeah.
You can go to Africa and build a school. You can't exactly like, I don't know, make pipelines, stop them from being built or stop or make everybody buy an electric car. I think the climate crisis is not it's not as easy for individuals to make a difference.
It starts with awareness and it starts with a discussion, as with anything of importance. And I think with what she is doing and with the platform that she is creating, yeah, she's young, but she also does have an influence, and she also has gotten a lot of people more aware about the ideas. And even if, a 30-year-old or a 6-year-old isn't going to listen to and just blows her off, which I think is a problem in itself. I mean, if she has facts and she has a discussion, why can't you listen to her because she's younger? But also, younger kids, they'll see her and they'll see, okay, this is what she's doing. She's a political activist. She's an environmental activist. What can I start doing? And, it increases the education from a younger age. So maybe she's not going to stop the pipelines being implemented. Maybe she's not going to stop the rise of global climate, but she is also influencing our next generation and the younger generations of children that are going to be dealing with a lot more of the brute force of climate change if we don't start doing something right about it now.
But she's also 16, so she doesn't have all the facts. She's
very educated if you listen to her, though. She knows what she's talking about. She doesn't not know what she's talking about.
You ever seen her go off script? I mean, she's a 16-year-old. I don't like this
She also has
fixation.
Asperger's.
I think she was too emotional. Like that speech where she was the "How dare you" speech.
Yeah.
That's
How
so
dare
famous.
you.
I think it just gives people, like you said, this is a very conservative, like left wing, right wing issue.
Mm-hmm.
I think it gives people on the right the ability to say, like, look at this. She's emotional, and then they can just disregard everything that she's saying.
Yeah.
Passion
Because
This
comes
woman
with
has
emotion,
clearly
though.
lost composure.
Oh.
I think you need to keep composed when you're trying to, relay a message, though, especially if you want people who
Something's-
don't already agree with you to take you seriously.
Something so dire, you'd think, but oh no.
Well, I think that's the idea, right? That it's so dire. That's why she's so emotional. But
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like
You're-
realistically, she comes from, where is she from again?
Sweden.
Sweden. She has a very comfortable life, I would say.
Probably.
This climate did not steal her childhood. Okay.
That's
I
not
agree
the
with
full
that.
quote. And she's what I mean.
You have stolen my dreams, and you have stolen my childhood. That was part of the
But
quote.
she is one of the lucky ones. So you look at all the other children that are in, third world countries
I
and all
don't
that
think
kind
you
of
can
stuff.
say
I
like
that
think
that's
those
the
countries were
climate.
kind of garbage to begin with, and it was not just this.
But they're still getting the brute force of
unfortunately,
extreme weather
But I
and
think
stuff
then-
like
if
that.
climate change wasn't an issue, I think their lives would not be that much better. Those children in developing countries.
Yeah. Well, that's where we have to end the discussion there. That was our show for this week. Thank you to everyone that tuned in, and thank you to the one person who messaged us live. A brand new episode of the Raben Report will be coming to you next week, same day, same time, same people. Have a great day, everyone.